The Bears have never had a good quarterback, but it's about as good as it gets in this situation, especially for being the first overall pick. This is as good of a first overall pick quarterback situation as you could ever dream of.
They legitimately have the best secondary in football right now. This
Yes,
defense reminds me a lot of those early 2010 Legion of Boom type defenses.
could this Bears team actually contend? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video on the channel today. As you may have noticed, I have a very special guest with me today, Patrick Sypher, host and producer of the Goal Line podcast. Make sure to check it out. But in today's episode, we have a very specific topic of conversation, a specific team, in fact. We're talking about the Chicago Bears. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have been an Illinois resident my entire life, born and raised, watched every single snap of every single Bears game since I was a sentient being. And to say that they have been relatively unsuccessful, I would say is probably an understatement. I don't know. I think you'd probably agree with that. So I think it was best that I would get somebody who isn't an Illinois resident, who isn't, a Chicago Bears fiend like me and my family are, to talk about this team and to think, are they actually maybe back for once? So that's the topic of conversation today. But before we get into that, Patrick, you have the floor. Go ahead and say whatever you want.
Well, I just want to say really quickly, you came to me with the idea of, hey, I want to talk about whether or not the Bears are back. And that's how you're phrasing it. Bears are back. I find that really ironic because as an 18-year-old, the Bears have never really been this great team, right? So you're saying Bears are back when pretty much my entire lifespan, I don't know exactly when their Super Bowl against the Colts was. So the year I was born, and it was actually like a month before I was born because I was born in March. So as far as I'm aware, the Bears have never been this great football team. The best they've been that I really remember is 2017. And this is the best they've been since then, in my opinion. And they're probably even better than they were then because I don't think this is just, hey, we have Khalil Mack and Vic Fangio's defense is taking over the league. No, I think that this is way more of a well-rounded roster that, I look at it and I say, man, what do you attack? Where's the weak spot? The only thing that concerns me, and I want to get the negative stuff out really quick. I have two major concerns.
Compliment sandwich.
Yeah, compliment sandwich, right?
Yep.
I have two main concerns. One of them I'll get into later. But the main one for me is injuries. I don't think this team has much depth whatsoever. I think their starting lineup is ridiculously well-rounded, but I think that comes at the cost of guys on the bench that could just come in and really show us something. I think the team really lacks depth. But besides that, you look at the starting lineup, if they could stay healthy, they're going to tear people up, man.
So I think it's funny, and you mentioned that are the Bears back? Well, where have they been to be back, right? That's kind of your point. To give you just a little history lesson, I doubt you watched it because, like you said, you're probably 4 years old. In 2010, the Bears made the NFC Championship game. 2010 was the last time that the Bears won a playoff game. So it's been almost 15 years since the last Bears playoff win. Obviously, you have the double doink. You have other tomfoolery moments that prevented that. But no playoff wins in about 15 years is just about as bad as it gets.
Would that have been a loss to Green Bay
Yes, it would have
or
been.
the Saints? Okay. I wasn't sure. I knew it was either Saints or Green Bay. All right.
And just to pour some salt on the wound for Bears fans, the Packers actually won that game because of a B.J. Raji pick six against the Bears backup quarterback. That's a little piece of history for you for today, my viewers. But the point of this video is, I guess, for me to say, like, could this Bears team actually contend? Like, are we looking down, the barrel of a team that is actually going to be competing to be legitimate contenders in the NFC? Are they going to, in the next couple of years, maybe upend the 49ers or the Eagles or the Cowboys? Sorry, I couldn't say that without laughing. As like the perennial NFC powerhouse team. And I think it's worth a discussion at this point right now. I wouldn't set the expectations super high for 2024. I think we get into 2025 and further, and I think it starts to get pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that statement right there. Again, I look at this roster after the draft, which I think most people agree they killed it, right? They absolutely killed it.
Yep.
I'm not even a big Caleb Williams guy, and I think they killed it.
Right.
The reality is when you have this young core, it's not just, oh, yeah, this year is the year. I feel like the window's just opening up. And it feels tough to say the window's open when the season hasn't even started. I mean, how many teams have we thought won the offseason just for them to end up kind of sucking for a couple of years or
Right.
being mediocre for a couple of years? The Browns are
Yep.
an example. It feels like last year's Jets were an example. But I
Yeah.
do feel really confident because this team differentiates itself in the sense that they are young. It's a young team. So even if this year it's disappointing, who's
Yep.
leaving? Keenan
Right.
Allen, okay, fine. But besides that,
Yep.
that is really like a big name, crucial piece should be gone. I don't know. It feels like most of these guys aren't just on rookie contracts, but they're going to be on rookie contracts for years to come. And that's what happens when you draft a franchise guy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a reset clock. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, again, is there a chance Caleb bust? Yes, I think that's way more of a possibility than people act like it is. But, you look at that supporting cast, it's very unlikely. Let's be honest here. Still,
Yep.
though, I just look at it. If you see Caleb in a positive light, which I feel like everyone should, even his biggest haters should see Caleb in a positive light, you should be positive about this football team and their future, not just this season.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great segue to talk about Caleb because everybody who has been pessimistic about the Bears has pointed to the fact that every Bears quarterback in, forever hasn't succeeded. Trubisky, Justin Fields, you can go back to Cade McNown and Rex Grossman and all of these guys who didn't succeed. And, you could say it's for one reason for another. But I think beyond the shadow of a doubt, Caleb Williams has the best supporting cast out of all those guys. He's got DJ Moore, who was a 1,300-yard receiver last year. He's got Keenan Allen, who has been a borderline Hall of Fame level producer at the receiver position. Got Rome Odunze, who some people argue was the second best receiver in a stacked receiver class. The offensive line is taking shape and getting better. I'd say it's about league average. Nothing to
I
write home
I
about.
think you're underselling it. I do.
Yeah,
I think they have one of the best young tackles in the sport in Darnell Wright.
there
And
you
then
go.
besides him, they've made some upgrades. I don't know what to think of the center, Coleman Shelton. I know he was on the Rams and he seemed all right, but
Yeah,
we're gonna see him kind of be
I don't love
attacked
their
a lot
guards
more.
either. I
Well,
don't love their
I
guards.
like Jenkins. I like Jenkins.
Jenkins is good. I don't like Dan
Nate.
Feeney. I think
Well, now it's Nate David who they brought in. So
I think they're going to be in a camp battle, is what I heard.
yeah,
That's
okay.
what's
Well,
just
we'll
not.
see. We'll see. But
Yeah,
the point is, you're going to get the better of two guys, right?
true,
And
true,
if that's their weak spot, if it's just center and right guard, they should be just fine, especially with those weapons. It helps make up
exactly,
for a lackluster offensive line. And then, of
exactly.
course,
So
the tight end room, right? You
yes,
got
Cole
Cole
Kmet.
Kmet,
Yes, very good.
Gerald Everett. We know Shane Waldron likes to do those two tight end, three tight end sets, so he is going to be an asset. Shane
Mhm,
Waldron likes heavy personnel, so we're going to see a lot of Blassingame. All right.
mhm.
And I also think the running back room is a deep unit. You got DeAndre Swift. You have a young back who I think has a lot of upside in Rashawn
Sean
Johnson.
Johnson. Yep.
And then you also got Khalil Herbert. So I really like the supporting cast. I'm in complete agreement here. And I think the offensive
Yes.
line is far from a weakness.
So you pair that with Caleb Williams, who is by far the best prospect the Bears have ever had at quarterback, maybe even a top 5 quarterback prospect in the history of the sport, or at least the modern draft day, right? And you're looking at it, and it's about as good as it gets in terms of guys going to be really good in the NFL, just like he was college. Like again, nothing's 100%. The draft is never an exact science. There's always going to be a few, guys that slip through the cracks, good or bad. But it's about as good as it gets in this situation, especially for being the first overall pick. This is as good of a first overall pick quarterback situation as you could ever dream of. And it just blew me away. The people like RG3 that were like, Caleb should refuse to play for the Bears. This is the best possible scenario for Caleb Williams, who was going to be the number 1 overall pick, regardless of who had the pick, right? Going to the Bears is amazing. Let's talk for a second about the Bears, though, and more specifically about their division. Um, part of the problem with being a contender in the NFL is you play in a hard division. Ask the Chargers what it's like to be in the same division as the Chiefs. Um, the NFC North was really good last year. 2 teams won playoff games. The year before that, the Vikings won 12 games in the regular season. Now, obviously, the Vikings look much different than they did in 2022, but the Lions and Packers are largely the same of what they were last year. Jordan Love and Jared Goff were really good. They both had big contributions from young offensive playmakers. Do we think the Bears have enough firepower or will very shortly have enough firepower to compete in the division with the Lions and the Packers?
So here's my thing, right? I look at a Detroit team that's really, really damn good. If I'm being honest, I think
Yes.
now that they really buffed up their secondary, it
Yes.
should be really scary. That defensive line, I already think is much better than it gets credit for. And now they add DJ Reader to it. I think that's one of the most underrated signings of the entire offseason right there. So I would say that's my biggest knock on Chicago right now. That division, man, it's scary. It is a scary one. Now, I'm not too worried about the Vikings. I think they might be able to do a little bit of damage, but I don't think they have quite the firepower to keep up with these other teams. Although Kevin O'Connell, he seemed to put a coach of the year type of season together with Joshua Dobbs coming in, right?
Right. And Justin Jefferson's pretty good, to be fair.
Well, yeah, he's good too. So it makes you think like, hey, maybe I'm underselling them. Maybe they can make a run here too. So even though I think they're the weak link, I think they're a very strong weak link to have.
Yes.
And Green Bay, we saw what Jordan Love did last year. I mean,
unfair.
I imagine most of the people watching this are Chicago Bears fans. And I'm sorry that every single year you have to deal with some like great quarterback. That would suck. I feel so bad for you guys. But yeah, no, I definitely have to acknowledge it's a tough division. Detroit's really good. Green Bay can do some great stuff. And Kevin O'Connell, as the Vikings head coach, will make sure that they are a competitive football team. And when all the other three teams in your division are competitive, that's really worrying for a young roster. However, I think in terms of firearms, they are far better than Green Bay. They are far better than the Vikings. I think Detroit and them, it's close. It's going to come down to coaching. It's going to come down to coaching, I truly do think. And I mentioned it earlier, the other major con that I have for this team is Waldron. I don't like Shane Waldron as an offensive coordinator. I really don't. I like him more than I like Getsy, but that doesn't make him good, guys.
It's not a high bar.
It doesn't make him good because he's better than the last guy.
Right.
It's an upgrade, but I don't really care. This is a team I think could make like a Texans-like run, but they don't have their Bobby Slowick. Okay, they don't. And that's what really concerns me here for them offensively.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to get into that defense because that's where I really start to get hype about this Bears team. If you don't mind me doing a transition on your show.
No. Take it away.
Yeah, that defense, man, can I just say, people are talking so much about this receiver core, about Caleb Williams as a young first overall pick, rookie quarterback. He's going to light it up. That's not where the hype for this team should be coming from. They legitimately have the best secondary in football right now. And I don't think it's overly close. I'm going to be honest. I really like the Browns cornerback room, but they don't have the safeties that the Bears do. Okay. The Bears secondary with Tyreek Stevenson, who balled out last year, didn't get anywhere near enough respect. Jalen Johnson might have had the best season out of any cornerback in the NFL last year.
And he got paid for it.
Yeah, and he got paid for it as he should. And then Kyler Gordon is a great player in his own right as a slot guy. Great player. So I look at those three corners, and then you have Kevin Byard up top, along with Jaquan Brisker, who is also a stud, does not get enough credit. In a scheme coached by a guy who just specializes in teaching these players in the secondary how to pass your guy off to the next guy. How do you play a soft zone coverage? Matt Eberflus will teach you. He is like this next generation's Gus Bradley. He does a really good job with it. And, I mentioned Gus Bradley. You're a Seahawks fan, so I am very proud to be making this comparison. This defense reminds me a lot of those early 2010 Legion of Boom type defenses. I'm not saying it's the same caliber, but I'm saying stylistically. Stylistically because the way this team is built, keep in mind, Eberflus and Gus Bradley, they have some connections, right?
Yeah.
And it's made very clear by how this team is being built. The fact they didn't take an edge rusher at 9, okay, it tells you a lot about how they feel about not just Montez Sweat, but also DeMarcus Walker. Why would you like both of those two guys? Why wouldn't you go for a complimentary edge rusher earlier on? They got a stud in Austin Booker later on, but why would you not go with another edge rusher later on? Well, the reason why is because they don't really care that these guys aren't getting, 15 sacks a season. That's not what Eberflus is looking for, okay? What he wants out of his defensive ends is guys that could defend the run, contain. Defend the run first, get to the quarterback second. It reminds me a lot of Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill, right? Two guys who they could get to the quarterback, but it was mainly run defense first. And they're passing the ball. It's okay. I have a couple extra seconds because I have the best secondary in football right behind me. All right. That makes me very optimistic about them because Montez Sweat and Cliff Averill can approach every play, unless it's like third and long, like it's a run play. And then once they notice it's a pass, it's like, okay, let me switch up my mindset a little bit. Now I'm going to work a swipe, get to the quarterback. All right. They have the ability to take every non-passing situation as a run play because the secondary is that good. That's how this team is coached up. That's how Eberflus likes it. And I think that allows it to be a much better run defense than the talent would make you think. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that overall, in terms of how it is structured, it's a little bit unique, but it works and it works really well. They like to run a lot of soft zone coverages. And pretty much the way you're going to have to attack this defense is 3-yard pass, 3-yard pass, 3-yard pass. Okay. You got to hope you get some plays after the catch against a very good tackling secondary because they're going to be playing back. They're playing cover 3 every damn play. Not country. They're going to play some match zone, but they are going to play back. They're going to prevent the big play, and that's what they're there for. They are not going to be trying to prevent these short yardage plays that can become big through yards after catch because it's cover 3, and it's cover 3 every damn snap. You'll see a little bit of man when you do start to do that, and that's when you're going to be able to get your big shots. But for the most part, they're going to try and threaten you with these soft zone coverages. And as a team, you got to know how to attack that. And it's very difficult to attack that when you have such a good back line. Okay.
Yeah.
This back 8, 2 amazing coverage linebackers in TJ Edwards and Kaiser. No, not Kaiser White. He is on the Cardinals. I was thinking Philly too much. TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. There you go.
Yep.
Him. Then in the secondary, like I said, with the corners, you have Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson. You also got Kyler Gordon. Thank you.
Yep.
And then Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker. That's a really good safety duo. This back 8 is really going to threaten people. It really is. It's really going to scare people. And that, I think, is going to make teams have to run the ball. And that's why Montez Sweat and DeMarcus Walker are still the starting 2 edge rushers on this team because they want edges that defend the run mainly. And then Austin Booker come in on 3rd and long. Okay. Yeah. And they also got some great guys on the interior. Andrew Billings, Gervon Dexter. They have youth there. Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry for going on a rant, but this defense, I think, is going to be a great unit.
I think that's important because, again, everyone's talking about Caleb and Rome and all this. But I think the defense has always been the backbone of the Chicago Bears. And again, as much as it's cliche to say, monsters of the midway or whatever, the Bears have never had a good quarterback. So if you can get the good quarterback, but keep the tradition of having those solid, stingy defenses that the Bears have had so often throughout my life, because the fact of the matter is you play in Chicago, Illinois. It's going to get cold. It's going to get windy. It's going to get snowy later on in the year. If you're in the playoffs and you're, God forbid, you have a game at Soldier Field, it's going to be probably 10 degrees and snowy, and those are not ideal offensive conditions. So can you play lockdown, shutdown defense? I think that's going to be the key to success for the Bears. I totally agree. Again, post-trade deadline last year, once they got Montez Sweat, that defense, I believe, went from like 25th, 26th to top 5, certifiably top 5 in the NFL with the addition of Montez Sweat. And I will even admit I hated the trade at first. I thought, why give up a 2nd-round pick for a guy that's an incoming free agent? Well, he was awesome. He balled out. They inked him to a 5-year contract, and now the Bears are set up to be a really, really good defensive team. Last thing I want to say, and I want to get your prediction on this. If I told you right now to predict the year that the Bears win their first playoff game with Caleb Williams, what year would you tell me?
It depends on the matchup, but there's definitely a part of me that wants to say 2024. There definitely is. There's a huge part of me, but it depends on the matchup. Stuff needs to go the right way. Again, I need to see Caleb Williams in action because there's a part of me that when watching his film said, this is almost too good to be true, right? The way this guy is playing, it doesn't seem realistic for it to work in the NFL because it was too much backyard ball for my liking. But if he can be a Patrick Mahomes, which is definitely possible, if he could do that, if we see that from day one, sky's the limit, not just for one playoff game, but I mean for the entire season. I mean, we saw what the Texans did last year, man.
That's
It's
true.
very, very possible for Chicago to be the same way.
No,
Now, am
I
I
understand.
guaranteeing that?
Yeah.
No. They
No.
need to avoid the rookie mistakes. But I think Eberflus does a very good job. I do. And I think that's the main thing when you have a young team like this. We saw it with the Packers last year, the division rival. When you have a young team, if you have the right coach, the sky is still the limit. It doesn't matter how young you are. Playoff experience matters far more for coaches than it does for players, is my take.
Smart. I like it. I like it. But you know what? That's going to wrap up this episode today. Thank you again, Patrick, for coming on and talking about the Bears with me and hopefully giving Bears fans everywhere a little bit of optimism because God knows they've needed it after these last 5 or 6 years. Again, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to check out the Goal Line podcast. I am a frequent guest. I have to say it's quite good. Even the episodes I'm not in are pretty damn good, I will say. But again, thank you for coming on. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace out.